All right, guys. So this is going to be a first lecture in knowledge, and this is going to be incorporated in the online course for Spider Bite Venom philosophy, and we're going to try to jump right into this. It might be kind of long, but um, it may not. But the point is that all these points I want to try to cover because I think this is going to give you a foundation into what Spider Bite Venom philosophy is all about, and hopefully give you that peace of mind that everyone is looking for. So, knowledge. What should you know, and when should you know it? And throughout this lecture, I'm going to be talking about the kind of knowledge that has more or less to do with the peace of mind, not necessarily the kind of knowledge that you would need in order to be a doctor or maybe an engineer or something like that. That's a whole nother field of study, and that has its own practical use. But the knowledge that I'm talking about here is so that you can have a peace of mind. Which I've tried to coin is to say it's the most powerful thing in the universe. Because once you have a peace of mind, then you'll be amazed at how well your life will go, how content you will be, how you able to get a lot of things done that you may otherwise not thought was possible, and how people will actually come to appreciate what you are as a person, and appreciate the compassion that you show them, and will tend to admire you because everyone is actually looking for that peace of mind, and once they see it in you, then you'll actually be a teacher or someone who can show them the way as far as obtaining that peace of mind. So that's what the kind of knowledge that I'm talking about here. It has everything to do with wisdom and not necessarily so much to do with practical applications like how to be an engineer or a doctor or something like that. So the first part here I talk about is knowledge as a tool, and what I mean by that is like a tool that can be used as a weapon. A tool. Let's say it's a hammer or screwdriver or something like that. Knowing how to use that tool for a specific purpose is what adds meaning to that tool. And we're going to have a whole nother lecture on attachment and meaning, and how to attach meaning to certain things, and why you don't want to attach meaning to certain things, and why in most cases you want to leave attachment alone altogether. But in this lecture here, we want to go ahead and attach meaning to the tools that we use, and one of those tools obviously is knowledge. And just like any other tool, it can be misused. It could be used as a weapon, and it's not to pass judgment on use of weapons, because a weapon could be used to defend yourself. It can also be used to attack. So that's the point of why I wrote. Like a tool, it can also be used as a weapon. It's potentially dangerous, but used the right way, it actually can protect and benefit a lot of people. So that brings us to part B, which is like a tool, it can also be used to defend or attack. And again, that's to say that when we acquire knowledge, our motive should be to defend ourselves. And when I say defend ourselves, that not necessarily mean physically, although that could be as well, used for. But that's more of a practical application. Like again, being an engineer or a doctor. What I'm saying here is that you want to learn how to defend your peace of mind. There's a saying, defend the peace. Well, that's what Spider Bite Venom is all about. It's about defending your peace of mind. And once you know how to defend your peace of mind, then you'll be surprised at how much suffering you'll alleviate, which is the whole point. Life is suffering because all of us are inherently selfish. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, because that leads us to this picture here, and this part C, which says, like a tool, it is mostly symbolic of our selfish nature. So if you look at this picture here, this is obviously about the story of Adam and Eve. And the point is not whether or not you believe in the story, because it all depends on obviously your religious background and your upbringing. But the story is meant to show that knowledge is really all about selfishness. When we're born, and when we were created as a species, our needs were already met, as far as the earth provided enough food. There was enough. We were born with capabilities. Every creature on earth, including human beings, were designed in order to sufficiently hunt and gather food and that sort of thing. So we are not lacking anything as far as that is concerned. The problem comes in when we think that's not enough, and that's what selfishness is. That's the definition of selfishness. And so, what is the first thing we want to do when we're selfish and we may not know about, may not be aware of or conscious of it? The first thing we want to do is seek knowledge on how to get what we think we lack. And that's why just that in of itself makes knowledge a symbol of our selfishness, because really, when you think about it, like animals, we really don't need any more knowledge than what we already are born with to survive. We can, once our parents raise us to a certain age, to where we can go out and get food for ourselves and build our own shelter and that sort of thing. Beyond that, we really don't need any more knowledge. And mankind has went on for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, doing just that, just getting by with just that little bit of knowledge, which is not even really knowledge. It's just instinct and intuition that we already have. But knowledge is obviously a step beyond that. It's a desire to know something in order to get something that we just simply want. It's got nothing necessarily to do with our immediate survival. It's just something that we that we want, something extra. And so this story here of Adam and Eve was a perfect example of why knowledge really is a symbol of our selfish desire, of our selfish nature. Because what happened here was, Eve, who was obviously a little less mature than Adam, and maybe you could say more naive, but really she was more selfish. And it's not to say that there's not a certain level of selfishness that's not good, because at the end of the day, our desire to live is on some level selfish. The problem is that those needs were already met for Eve, and so what she did was she kind of went away from her husband and was basically seduced by the serpent like creature who represented the devil. And the devil basically told her, look, you can have it all, and Eve was trying to argue back with the snake at first by basically repeating what she had learned from Adam. So right there, she already had enough knowledge to survive and be content and have a peace of mind. But what she ended up doing was listening to this serpent, and she saw that this fruit that was forbidden for her to eat all of a sudden became desirable, which represents her selfish desires. And so the serpent basically tells her, look, if you eat from the tree, your eyes are bound to be open, and you're bound to be like God. So basically, what he was offering her or trying to convince her of was, look, you can have it all. It's just that God and your husband Adam are in your way from getting that. So all you have to do is just decide, make a choice to get it all. Get everything that you want. And she tried to come back and say, well, isn't it not true that I'm going to die the moment that I eat from the fruit? And of course, the serpent says, no, that's not going to happen. And that's because the serpent knew that God had already promised them that they will become many, have children, and that sort of thing. So God did not necessarily mean in that instant they would die, but eventually they would if they didn't obey. So we all know what happened at the end of the story. She goes ahead and does it. She takes the fruit, she eats it, and then she thought it was perfectly fine. There was nothing wrong with that. But what obviously changed in her was, because nothing happened to her in that moment, nothing what she thought was considered bad or anything, or she thought that she had it all. But the problem is that now she had to go confront her husband, tell him about it, and obviously confront God about it, so now this is where the suffering starts, because now, you know, and this is the lesson for life, is that when you think you have it all, you know, it's just automatically going to make you want more, because now that she's done this, now she's going to want more, which is she's going to want her husband to take the fruit and eat it, and she's also going to want God to basically not, you know, sentence her to death. And it just never ends. And so basically, you know, she would have to become like God herself, which is what Satan promised her, which we all know was a lie. So this is the problem with knowledge. You know, she thought that, you know, the knowledge that she was going to get just by eating a fruit, you know, which is, when you look at that, it's just kind of an easy way out. It's kind of a, you know, way to cheat the system. She got none of that. And, you know, she ended up suffering as an end, you know, because God told her and her husband, Adam, once he took the fruit, you know, that they both were going to toil and suffer, and she was going to suffer labor pains every time she gave birth. And you know, and as we know, back then, people were, you know, those labor pains oftentimes meant the woman was going to die, not even survive having a child, or if not her, the child was going to die. So, you know, that was going to happen to her. And then, you know, Adam would have to toil trying to plant crops, and you know, which meant that he couldn't do it in the fertile area where he was at in the Garden of Eden. So he was going to be exiled from that and have to do it all on his own and with no help. And, you know, it's not, now these two learn a horrible lesson that, you know, selfish desires leads to suffering. It always does. It never happens the opposite way. You know, even those that we think that may be getting away with something, at the end are going to suffer death. And that's because we all grow old and die. And someone who thinks that they might have accomplished everything, what do they ultimately want? Is to live forever. And we know that's not possible. So even those people who are super ambitious and they conquer the world, at the end of the day, on their deathbed, they are suffering to some extent, because they realize that they're going to die and they haven't been able to conquer death. And that's that peace of mind that they won't have, that I'm trying to teach you in this course, that you can have. You know, that's what we're all looking for, is that peace of mind, is to not fall for these types of deceptions. So that's why knowledge is mostly symbolic. You know, it's not you know, reading a book or necessarily some teacher, some guru telling you this stuff. It's lessons like this that teach us how to have a peace of mind and how to control ourselves. You know, self-control, have more self-control, and be less selfish. You know, that's what really knowledge is all about. So that brings us to part 2, which is knowledge is acquired systematically. You know, going back to this picture here, you know, the reason why Eve was a more easier target was because Adam. I mean, we don't know how long Adam lived on the earth. Adam could have before Eve came along. You know, it could have been 100 years. Who knows? There's, you know, in the Bible it doesn't really say, but she was obviously a lot older than Eve. So so Eve, didn't know that much and compared to Adam, and so that meant that her trying to acquire knowledge too soon, certain types of knowledge too soon, was potentially dangerous. And the fact that she fell for this, this serpent telling her that she can gain all this extra knowledge, led to her downfall. So this is why knowledge has to be acquired systematically. Like you wouldn't teach a child, how to practice gay butt sex and stuff like that. Even though they're trying to push that in schools nowadays, which is totally ridiculous and retarded. But kids, when they become of a certain age, in particular when they reach puberty, that's when you can touch on subjects like that. If you try to teach a young kid the birds and the bees when he can barely tie his shoe, all you're going to do is confuse the kid, maybe subject him to some really dangerous situations where, he could be molested or taken advantage of, or is that something horrible like that. So knowledge has to be acquired systematically, in order to protect the one who's acquiring the knowledge, and also to protect the one who's offering that knowledge or giving that knowledge or teaching that person. So knowledge acquired by oneself is dangerous. Even though everything here on this course is all about trying to help you teach yourself, still, if you're going through this course, I'm the one that's teaching you. You trying to figure out all this stuff on your own. Sure, you can do it. It might take you as long as I did, which is why I wish I would have learned a lot of stuff that I know now a lot sooner. But if you try to teach yourself, and try to learn on your own how to have a peace of mind, when you're not ready for it, that could be dangerous. You can really run into some situations where you're overwhelmed and you are given too much responsibility before you can handle it, or you become frustrated because you're not finding out the type of stuff that you need to know or that you want to know. You might, as a result, make some really horrible mistakes, some that can be injurious to other people, even to yourself. So it's, this is why we have parents. Parents teach us certain things at a certain time. This is why you can't, go to a university before you go to high school. You can't go to high school before you go to elementary school. I mean, all this stuff is systematic because there's certain things you need to learn first before you learn more advanced type stuff. So trying to teach yourself, is potentially dangerous. Not saying it can't be done. It's just, you got to remember that time is one of those variables, and I speak about this in other lectures. But time is one of those variables that you have no control over, and You don't have that kind of a variable that's on your side when you want to teach yourself. You know, life is short. You can really waste a lot of time learning a bunch of nonsense or stuff that is actually going to make you do the wrong thing. You know, so we got to be careful with that. You know, trying to teach ourselves, and that's why, you know, Eve, again, she thought she could teach herself. You know, so that's basically what the serpent was trying to tell her. It was like, look, you don't need God to teach you anything. You don't need Adam, your husband, to teach you anything. You can figure this out on your own. All you gotta do is just eat this fruit, and your eyes are bound to be open, and you'll know what to do. You know, which was obviously you know, a lie. So you got to be careful about acquiring knowledge by yourself. It's dangerous. So knowledge acquired from some guru is also dangerous. You know, so here you know, going back to this picture here. So here you had Eve for a moment was being taught by the serpent instead of her own husband, or instead of God, who knew better, and she was misled. You know, and this is why we have to be careful of, you know, learning this kind of stuff from some guru or some swami or some dummy that doesn't even know what the real cause of suffering is, which is selfishness. And you know, most of these self-help gurus and swamis and whatnot, you know, they're all in it for themselves. You know, they charge money for stuff for information like this. They you know, you know, make themselves out to be some kind of rock star, you know, some kind of, you know, popular you know, circus clown that gets everybody's attention. I mean, they you know, those types of people are dangerous to learn from. You know, they really don't know what they're talking about, or if they do, they're going to really teach you how to be selfish, which is what you don't want. You know, it's not to say you don't want to accomplish things in life and do things and that sort of thing, but it just means that your peace of mind all depends on how selfish you are. The less selfish you are, the more peace of mind you'll have, the less suffering you'll have to endure. So we have to be careful about that. So knowledge acquired without patience is too dangerous. So that means, you know, if we even feel the inclination to learn something before we're ready to learn that, you know, we need to check our motives. We need to check ourselves. We need to take a step back, because now we're becoming impatient, and that impatience is just another way of saying you're selfish. You know, there must be some selfish reason, some desire that's selfish, that can explain why you're so impatient. You know, you really, knowledge is, unless you are, again, learning how to be a doctor or engineer or something like that, there's really not that much knowledge you need to know. It really isn't. Really, it all comes down to whether or not you know that our selfish desires, we're all first of all, we're all selfish, and that our selfish desires leads to suffering. That's really all the knowledge you need to know. Everything else is just kind of to explain how that is, and in practical life. I mean, it's just a repetition of that basic fundamental fact. And, going to listen to some guru talk about, conspiracy theories or how this and this and that happens. And if we were to, I don't know, read a million books and learn the ways of Swami so-and-so and top guru so-and-so and how he built his business and all that, we can learn the secrets to life. And it's just silly bunch of nonsense. It has nothing to do with real knowledge, the kind of knowledge that's going to give you that peace of mind. And so this is why it's dangerous to learn from those people. Because if we try to learn from those people, all we're going to find is that we're still selfish, which leads to suffering, and we're going to, and even if what they tell us gives us what we want, it's never going to be enough. We're always going to be looking for more, and it's just the wrong way to learn or to acquire knowledge. It just is, all these people that teach how to make money online and how to be a guru, and it's just silly. It's got nothing to do with acquiring a peace of mind, which is what this is all about, So you got to be patient, because when I say these things, to most people, maybe even to yourself, it sounds like that. Well, that's not enough. I need more than that. When you don't, you really don't. You don't need more than that. You just need to be patient with yourself and just take that little bit of knowledge and see how that works in your life. And you'll find that it's way more powerful than learning the 10 secrets to, taking it easy and working for the rest of your life on the beach somewhere and never having to do a 9-to-5 job ever again. It's way better than that. It's way more powerful than learning that kind of stuff, because this is going to make you more productive than anything. And when I say productive, I mean it's going to make whatever you do count, because you're really not going to be doing that much. You're really just going to be more or less doing anything to defend your health and yourself in general, not necessarily to be ambitious and do all this other stuff. And you'd be so surprised at how all the extra stuff that you thought that you needed are just going to be given to you without even asking for it. That's really how life works. We're taught the opposite. Like Eve here, she thought the opposite. She thought that everything had to be acquired. She thought she had to do it herself. Instead of just waiting for things to just be patient. She already had everything she needed, so if she would have just been patient, she would have had a lot more than that. Imagine if this woman still would have been alive today, had she not disobeyed and fell for this deception. We all, as the story would have went, we all would have been, those who maintained perfection would have still been alive, and she was obviously still would have been alive, and she probably would have been, some queen or who knows, or some kind of godlike in her own right, but again, she tried to take the easy way out, and now she's dead, and she suffered. So we got to be patient. Patient is not just a virtue. It's if we're not patient when we're trying to acquire knowledge, it's potentially dangerous, which means we could die. So we got to be patient. You got to be careful with that. So knowledge acquired with peace of mind is all powerful. And that means that, when we have that peace of mind, that's just repeating what I just said about how that peace of mind is really way more powerful than knowledge itself. Once we have that little bit of knowledge, it's like a fire. To start a fire, you need a little wood and maybe some oil, or a spark or something like that. And then once you get that fire going, that fire can be as big as you want. And it's the same thing with knowledge. Once you have that little bit of knowledge to give you the peace of mind that you were looking for, well, not only will you'll have that peace of mind for that day, the day that you acquire that knowledge, but you'll have the peace of mind for the rest of your life, as long as you continue to use that knowledge in that way. The problem is when we think we need more than that. Again, if we want to be a doctor or engineer, yes, we're going to need more than that, but that's a different type of knowledge. Those are more or less skill sets that we need to learn in that particular field of study. But as far as peace of mind, and you're going to find out that the people who spend all their time learning how to be an engineer or doctor and all that are going to have to be used by a system who ultimately are maybe not currently run by, but were founded by smart people who, or I shouldn't say smart, but wise people who had a peace of mind, people who sat down and thought about these things. May not have been a doctor, but figured out a way to have a system so that doctors can be hired and used and worked into some kind of insurance type system. All that kind of planning and stuff had to be done by somebody who who had a peace of mind and was able to think out those things, maybe through experience or maybe through actual knowledge taught by someone else. Anybody with practical skills like that ultimately have to be used as a tool. So the tool is not what's powerful. It's the user of the tool is what's powerful. A doctor, yeah, he's a powerful tool, but obviously the system that he has to work within is way more powerful, infinitely more powerful than that. So it's a big mistake to kind of look at it backwards, but we're so deceived to look at things the opposite way, because like Eve here, we're told that, oh, that's the way you do it. If I become a doctor, I can become rich. Well, go ahead and try it. If you try it that way, you're probably not going to be a doctor, because you're going to realize that trying to be a doctor in order to make more money, when that's really not what you really want to do, or even if it is what you want to do, is never going to be enough, because doctors only make us so much money. There's way more other types of people, especially business people, who make way more than a doctor does. And, you didn't have to spend a fraction of the amount of time it takes to become a doctor. So we got to think about knowledge in that way. We want knowledge to acquire a peace of mind, not necessarily to become powerful, because once we acquire a peace of mind, that in of itself is all powerful. We don't have to, actively seek power. Our peace of mind is what's powerful enough. And that's how we have to look at it. So that brings us to part 3 here, which is knowledge that is pure is about self-control. And basically, this means that, when we learn something, and it doesn't matter if it's from some guru, maybe you did find a guru or some swami who knows what he's talking about, and he's not a charlatan, and he's teaching you for free, or you can learn from him for free somehow. The kind of knowledge that is going to be pure is the type of knowledge that's going to teach you self-control. So there's all kinds of ways of knowing that, because there's disciplines that come out of that kind of knowledge. So disciplines like, fasting, disciplines like, maybe it is going to school and following a certain protocol to learn something practical. Maybe it's going to the gym, training. Maybe you want to be a boxer, or play sports or something like that. That those types of disciplines are going to teach you about self-control, which is really pure knowledge. Pure knowledge is about teaching you self-control. Any other type of knowledge is not going to teach you that. Again, it'll be more practical type stuff, which can be good. But if it's for some swami, some guru who's trying to tell you, go out there and conquer the world and that kind of stuff, that's not really teaching you self-control. If anything, it's the opposite. Because now you're running off pure passion and ambition, which means you'll never be satiated. You'll always want more. It'll never be enough. Someone will always make more money than you. Someone will always have more stuff than you. And you'll suffer emotionally as a result. So you got to learn how to control yourself. And that's what we're discussing here is part A, knowledge used to avenge the life of another is rooted in fear. Now, if you at first glance here, you might think, well, wait a minute, isn't there a time that we need to avenge the life of, let's say someone was to kill a family member, something like that. Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's the first thing you want to do is to get vengeance. But see, you already have a court system in place that deals with that, and you don't have to, take the law in your own hands and grab a gun or something and go try to kill that person. If you live in the United States, for example, most states have the death penalty. So, so there's a way for the system to, which in of itself, remember, a system is a creation. Creation is selfishness. I talk about this in other lections. And not to pass judgment on that system, but because the system itself is selfish, that's the only instrument that can really be the candidate or the one to take out or to right injustice. And sometimes that doesn't even work because, and I speak about this in my other lectures, that a system is inherently corrupt because the people who work in that system are also selfish. But for the most part, that system tries its best to exact justice. So we just need to leave it up to that system to handle injustice. We don't need to personally take out vengeance on someone else. If we do, it may work, but at the same time, it'll never be enough. Because, let's say we're able to, pick up a shotgun and go kill somebody who maybe killed a family member of ours, or maybe raped somebody in our family. Now, you're going to realize that after you kill that person and that person is dead and gone, you're going to realize that that person is, at that moment, is no longer suffering for what crimes he did. And that's going to bother you because you're still alive, he's dead, but he's no longer suffering and you are. And that's why vengeance, it never works. It never works. Whereas, if you you just let the system take care of itself, then you'll have the satisfaction that I didn't necessarily take out vengeance, but that person got what he had coming to him, and that just gives you more confirmation and more proof that that's really how life works. And that person did suffer death as a result because the system took care of that. So if we don't look at it in that way, then that means we're in fear, because now, we may not be afraid of picking up a shotgun and going to hunt down that person who did harm to us, but we are afraid of not doing it, right? Because if we're afraid that we can't live with ourselves because we weren't able to hunt down the killer and kill him, that's fear. That's fear. Yes, we want to, obviously grieve, take some time out to grieve over our dead loved ones and that sort of thing. But, life moves on. We can't grieve forever. And we can't allow that grief be turned into fear and anger and then make us want to take vengeance out on somebody. That's no way to get peace of mind. No matter what we do, and that's kind of an extreme example because most of the examples that we face in life are a lot less extreme than that. Most of it is just, maybe somebody at work does something wrong to us, or, tries to get us fired, or maybe someone in our family, says something stupid to us or whatever, insults us or whatever, and we want to get back, or maybe a friend or coworker, or who knows. That's the kind of stuff we mostly face is that kind of stuff, and our desire to avenge that wrong or to avenge what happened is rooted in fear. Believe it or not, it's fear, because we subconsciously think that we can't live with ourselves knowing that person particularly got away with it. Whether that person gets away with it or not has really no concern to us. We have a better chance of acquiring a peace of mind when we just see things for what they are. We just have to, it's like the Stoics say, we just have to realize that, hey, these people don't know what they're doing, and that's why, going back to this picture here, God did show some mercy on Adam and Eve because he didn't kill them right away. He did allow them to live out their lives and fulfill his promise where he said they can multiply and become many. So, and they lived quite a long time. According to the Bible, they lived for hundreds of years. So, we don't want to exact, vengeance. We have a system that does all the eye for eye, tooth for tooth, and that sort of thing. What we want to focus on is self-control. because the more self-control we have, the less we're going to suffer, no matter what. So that brings us to part B, which is knowledge used to make things you want them to be is selfish. So like this picture here, going back to this picture, where it wasn't enough for Eve, all that God had given her. So now, she starts to blame him. She starts to blame her husband for not having it all. And that's why she went ahead and took the fruit. So this perfectly shows why this desire, and we all have it, but this desire to make things the way we want them to be is selfish. Because the moment we think that way is a moment that we forget about everybody else. Maybe the way things are works best for other people. The fact that Adam and Eve, let's say her husband already was content with everything that he needed. Now that Eve wanted to make things her way, look what she did. She ended up affecting him in a negative way because, she wanted things her way. And then when Adam, followed suit and did the exact same thing, that made it bad for God. So because now God, basically had a plan for them, and now that's all off the table. And so both Adam and Eve acted out of selfishness, and that's what happened. So when we want to make things the way we want them to be, whether we think they're good or not, that's not the point. It's just the fact that we want them, just the fact that we want things different is selfish. And, it's different than, given an opportunity by other people to make things the way we want, because maybe they trust us. That's what you're going to find, that once we have a peace of mind, people are going to trust you. They're going to, it's interesting how this all works, because trying to make things the way you want them to be all by yourself is ridiculous. It really doesn't work, and if it does, you're going to hurt somebody. Whereas if you just be patient and allow people to give you the opportunity to make things the way they want them to be, that's because now they see that you can be trusted, and they see that the way you want things to be benefits them as well. And you're going to find it's a whole lot easier. People are going to look up to you to make things the way they want them to be, and isn't that ultimately what you want? Is to make things the way everybody wants them to be, instead of just for yourself? That's how we should look at things. So if we want to make things the way we want them to be, it's selfish. And we have to be very careful and mindful of that, because otherwise we're going to suffer. It's really interesting how, you see nowadays in politics, and it's always been this way in politics, but how you have all these different groups and identities, and people who say they're this and this and that, and playing the victim and lobbying, the government to do this and change this law and that sort of thing. It's ridiculous, because those people will never be satiated. Those people will never find peace of mind. Those people are trying to make things the way they want them to be. They don't give a damn about the way things are. as they are now. They don't even understand why they are the way they are. You know, they don't realize that the reason why things are the way they are is because mankind has tried since Adam and Eve to make things the way they want them to be for thousands of years. So how is it that now you're some millennial or you're some idiot that comes out of nowhere saying, "Oh, I'm going to lobby Congress and change laws and make things the way we want them to be," and this just going to upend all tradition and all cultural norms and that sort of thing, and think that's going to be good for people. It's just it doesn't work like that. I mean, good luck with that kind of a fight, because even if you win, even if you were to win, it'll never be enough. It'll never be enough, because now, let's say you get some law changed, or where you allow gay butt sex or something. Okay, that's not going to be enough. Now it's going to be something else. It's like, well, maybe we can change the law and I can marry my dog, or marry my sister, or something stupid like that. And this is the problem, where it's just never, selfishness never stops. It's never enough. You feel justified because you got your way in one area, and now you think you're God, like Eve thought she was, and now you think that you need to make everything the way you want them to be. Everything the way you want you think they ought to be, and that's just selfish, and it's dangerous, and it doesn't work. Ultimately, you're going to suffer, and even if you get away with it, you're going to die at some time, whether it's getting old and die, or somebody just outright getting rid of you. You're going to suffer emotionally because of that, because it's never enough. Because when you force somebody to do things the way you want them to do, they're going to resent you for it. And that in of itself is going to make you suffer emotionally. Why? Because deep down inside that person is not doing, it doesn't agree. That person doesn't agree with what you're trying to do. You just force them to do it. You're just making them a slave, and you're a slave too, because now that you were able to get that, get this group of people to do whatever you want, and they don't really want to do it, then you're gonna try even harder to get them to agree with you. And as well as I do that we have free will. You can't force someone to think the way you want them to think. Not even God could do that. I mean, look at God. He basically could not get Eve to obey him on a simple little test like, don't eat this fruit. So how in the world are you going to force people to agree with the way you think they ought to? Way you think things ought to be? It's impossible. The only thing that you can do is just show compassion, and then that affords an opportunity for people to trust you, and then they are going to suggest the way things ought to be and ask you to do it for them. And that's a wise and competent leader. At that point, now you're a competent leader because people trust you, people look up to you, and they believe that you can make things the way they ought to be, but for the benefit of everyone, not just for your own selfish desires. So we got to be careful with that. We don't want to make things the way we think they ought to be, because that would be selfish. So that brings us to part C, which is knowledge used to teach how to defend others is compassionate. So going back to this whole idea about knowledge is a tool, and knowledge is used for defense only. Um, you know, when we use knowledge for any other purpose other than to defend ourselves, which is basically our peace of mind, we're in trouble. You know, there's a saying, and I've said this in other lectures. Don't go looking for trouble, because now, when you go on the attack, see, now you're no longer defending yourself, and whether you think you're justified, Spider by Venom philosophy is a combination of Jedi / Stoic / Tao philosophy. And you go back to the movie Star Wars, where here, the Emperor and Vader, Anakin now turned Vader, basically went and hunted down the Jedi and destroyed the Jedi Order and killed all the Jedi, even killed younglings and that sort of thing. And here Yoda, felt totally justified to go and take out Emperor Palpatine. But at the end of the day, it was a stalemate. And he failed, and he went into exile as a result. And he had all the justification in the world to kill the Emperor, to kill Palpatine. But by the very fact that he went go looking for trouble, he found it, and he failed. And this is Yoda, the wisest, the most powerful Jedi of them all. So, and I mean, and that was the case for all those characters in that movie. All the characters in that movie, whether it was Luke Skywalker or Yoda or Mace Windu or Anakin himself or Emperor Palpatine, they all basically learned. Well, maybe they didn't learn, but some of them, most of them did. That it's about defending yourself, not going on the attack. And if you use knowledge for that reason, for that purpose only, then you're good. Otherwise, you're looking for trouble, and you're probably going to get killed. And if you don't get killed, you're probably going to, suffer or get in prison or something, or be forced into exile or something. And that's not to say we're passive, but to some extent it is. When it comes to this type of stuff, you are passive, but you're not passive in the sense that if someone does come up and try to attack you, well, you have the knowledge to defend yourself. See, that's not passive. So let's say someone comes up and tries to break into your house and you have a gun to defend yourself. That's not passive. But if you to go and take a gun and go looking for trouble and go looking for somebody because maybe you thought that person broke into your house, or you thought that person maybe hurt someone you love, then now that might not go well. And that's because you think that, well, I don't want to be passive, so I got to take action. You're going to find that most of the times taking action is not the answer. It's something I had to learn. I've had to learn, and I'm just kind of recently learning this to a deeper extent all over again, that action is really not, it's funny because you see all these gurus and these swamis and these dummies on YouTube and on the internet saying take action and you got to go get yours and conquer the world and you got to be like so and so and so and so if you want to make all the money you want, and it's just no, it's the opposite. It's just, and don't take that much action at all. Just your reputation as a wise and as someone who found peace of mind is going to get out there. That reputation is going to get out there one way or the other. You don't have to do anything to get that out there. It's going to happen. And you shouldn't care whether or not it happens or not anyways. But because this is about, having that for yourself. But trying to go beyond that, trying to use knowledge to go on the attack is ridiculous. This is why, I brought this example up before in another lecture about Muhammad Ali. The reason why he was the greatest boxer of all time was because he would talk trash to provoke the anger of his opponent, because he knew that most people were retarded and angry and dumb. Angry makes you retarded and afraid, and so he would do that. He would talk trash to provoke them to get angry, and then when you see him in the ring, it would look like for the first half of the fight he was losing, because he would basically just be just defending himself. He's not really taking all this action, so to speak. But what he would do every time he would dodge a punch, which is defending himself. This is defense. He had the knowledge how to defend himself. Then that's when he would come back with a counter strike and knock his opponent out in one blow. Boom, he's done, he's on the ground. And this is because this is why you use attack very sparingly. This is why I mentioned the defend or attack early in this lecture, and I didn't pass any judgment on it. But basically, the purpose of that was to say defense, or knowledge used for defense, is what it's primarily used for. The attack is only used sparingly and only used to eliminate the threat from coming back at you. But it's being handled in that moment, because you weren't the one that went looking for the fight. That person came looking for you. So if you defense is not enough to get rid of the threat in that moment, you might have to go ahead and kill that person. But that would be doing it out of self-defense. It wouldn't necessarily be doing it because you went looking for trouble. And there's a big difference in that. That's why it's safer to lean more on defending yourself than trying to acquire knowledge for attack. If you defend yourself, more likely, like Muhammad Ali used to do, he would just tire his opponent out. Because he knew that, always playing on offense or always going on the attack wears yourself out. You only have so much adrenaline, and then your body has to recharge and rejuvenate that amount of energy. And meanwhile, it doesn't require as much energy to defend yourself. All you got to do is just dodge blows and block shots and that sort of thing. But then once you see your enemy is tired out because he's retarded and stupid for going on attack in the first place, now you got a shot. And when you go on an attack, using that attack mode very sparingly, it's all you need, because now he's too tired to even defend himself, and then he leaves himself wide open for you to take the shot, and boom, he's gone, he's dead. But see, it's interesting though, if you go on in the fight, and this is why you got to watch Star Wars, and you see it's always whoever draws the sword first, is always the one who is either ends up in a stalemate or ends up getting killed. or maybe getting an arm cut off or something like that. I'm not talking about the Disney nonsense, because that's not Star Wars. I'm talking about the George Lucas Star Wars. That's really the Jedi philosophy that I'm talking about. And you'll see that whoever draws their sword first is usually the ones that's going to suffer in the end. Or maybe it just ends up as a stalemate. They don't, nobody wins. But if you defend yourself, see, that's when you can usually come out the victor, because now you can use that attack mode very sparingly, and usually use that at a time where your opponent is most vulnerable, because now he's tired himself out. So let's just focus on using knowledge to defend ourselves. And when we teach others how to defend ourselves, that's compassionate. We don't want to teach others this kind of knowledge in order to, make more money, or, become some fancy guru, some Swami or something like that. And, he's, next Jimmy Baker, riding around in fancy cars and living large, and on TV talking about, give me all your money and I can, teach you the way to the path of God. And all. It's just a bunch of nonsense, or even these self-help gurus like Tony Robbins and all. I mean, bless their hearts, but they're just, they're not teaching you what this is all about, which is selfishness, and why that leads to suffering. They're all about, get up off your ass and go for it, and I can, show you how you can be a success. And it's just all silly nonsense. That's not defense. That's attack. And that's why those people are never satisfied. That's why they have to keep going to seminar after seminar and pay all this money out to go on these retreats, and and you see some dummy who thinks he's Jesus Christ, and he's supposedly some spiritual guru who's trying to lead you to the way of enlightenment. It's just silly nonsense. It's got nothing to do with what's really the problem and what you're really looking for, which is peace of mind. And you just want to know how to defend that, and defend yourself, defend your family. You don't want to, have to learn how to conquer the world. That's for silly people. Let somebody else do that. There's enough people that want to do that, and whether there's some benefit or not that comes out of that, that's fine. You don't have to do all that work. Actually, by those people doing, letting their passions and their ambitions run wild, they end up being your slaves in an indirect way. They end up being a slave not only for people who really control the system, but for you as well, because what they create, if there's any benefit of it at all coming out of that, that's just going to benefit you, and you don't have to do make any extra effort to make any of that happen. You let them do all the suffering and go through all the nonsense to make that happen. You're just there when it's all said and done. And then that's how you got to look at things. When you look at things that way, a whole lot easier, gives you a way better peace of mind. So anyway, let's wrap this up with this last part, which is knowledge used to teach others who are not afraid is compassionate. And it's just kind of repeating what I was saying earlier. When we teach, once we have this knowledge, which is not much, as you can see, it's just knowing how selfish we are. That's compassion. What Adam did by teaching Eve, what God's law was at first, that's all she needed. And that was the compassion he needed to show to her in the beginning. Now, obviously, that wasn't enough for them, but that should be enough for us. When we teach others not to be afraid, when we teach them really what fear is all about, fear is not, I'm confident to face down some opponent. or I'm confident enough to get in the boxing ring and punch somebody out. That's not confidence. Uh, Confidence really is not being afraid to lose. That's real confidence. And when we could teach that to others, we're being compassionate. If we're teaching them how to be ambitious and how to go for yours, and you go girl, and it's all about you, and look at me, and I'm your guru, and all, it's not now you're selfish. Now you're no different than some of these kings and emperors and even the popes, some of these papacies, papal regimes that happened back in the day, where it was just so corrupt because everybody was selfish. Everybody was just out to trying to take each other out so they can get more power. And that's not what we want to teach people. We don't want to teach people how to be, competitive and that kind of stuff. We can. There's a way to compete, but it's not even really competition. It's just defending yourself. Once you learn how to defend yourself, you can outcompete anybody. Because you'll know when you need to use that attack mode, and you'll know that it's not much at all. You don't need to use that attack mode at all. You let the dummies compete against themselves. Let them take each other out. And I got a whole nother lecture on how that whole thing has been used and abused, but it works. And on a personal level, you can use it to your benefit. Let the dummies and the idiots and the retarded, she-boons and the dummies in politics, let them battle it out. Because this little knowledge that you need to know about selfishness will give you enough understanding to know that those people can only go so far. And at the end of the day, you're going to be there to benefit, because someone's going to take them out. They're going to be replaced by somebody else. Nothing lasts forever. And so there's no reason to worry about it. You don't have to get involved in any of that stuff at all, and, and that's if you want a peace of mind. If you're looking for something else, maybe peace of mind is not what you're looking for. Maybe peace of mind is taking over the world, and there's no judgment on that. I can't sit here and say that's not a good thing or a bad thing, because maybe some good will come out of it. But what I will say is that more than likely that will lead to suffering. Well, it will lead to suffering, because at the end of the day, it'll never be enough. Even if you conquer the whole world, it's never enough. Why? Because you'll never conquer death. At some point, you're going to die. And you know that. So, anyways, just like Adam and Eve here, they ultimately died. That was, no matter how much knowledge they had about anything, they're dead. So, that wraps up this lecture here. This is the first lecture about this subject on knowledge. And I hope you enjoyed it, and look forward to the next one. Thank you.